Well, if you wanted chaos in college football, you got it on Saturday. I was about to record this a little bit after Georgia's win, lopsided win over UMass, 59-21. I'll talk about that game in a second. But as the game kept going, or excuse me, as the day kept going, the longer I waited to record because people kept losing. I mean, there we were during the UMass game, and Georgia's not tackling at all. They didn't play great on defense. On offense, Georgia's offense is really starting to click right now. And I think if you are worried about anything, this season it's been the offense more than the defense, right? I mean, I guess, but you watch an Indiana lose, not surprising, right? But then Ole Miss loses, and you're like, wait a second now, this might be one of those days. I got to watch Penn State. I got to watch Texas. Texas didn't look great against Kentucky. Kentucky can do that to you. Man, Penn State's fortunate they won that game. And then Colorado getting their just heads kicked in. Travis Hunter's hitting the Heisman pose while his team goes on to lose by 16. Maybe let's just kind of focus on the team. And then at night with Alabama losing, um, well, the combination of Alabama losing and Texas A&M losing meant that Georgia would go play for the SEC championship for the fourth season in a row. They'll play the winner of Texas and Texas A&M, and I don't think there's lines out yet for that, but I would imagine Georgia will be favored either way. Playing this game in Atlanta, in a best case scenario, if you're Georgia, you'd play A&M, but I'd like their chances with either of those two teams. So Saturday was about surviving the day. And, Ohio State looks, to me, pretty good. I think Ohio State or Oregon, probably Ohio State, is the best team in the country. I think the question becomes, no matter who you are, can you survive your run now? I think Tennessee is in. I mean, if everything holds up the way that it should, Tennessee will play in the playoff, Georgia will play in the playoff, and then Texas will play in the playoff. If things don't hold up, like if Tennessee loses to Vanderbilt, they're only a 12-point favorite. Them losing to them, I really doubt that. Georgia losing to Tech. Because I think the only thing that can prevent Georgia and Tennessee both getting in right now are losses to their in-state rivals. I don't see either of those things happening. But, I mean, Georgia's going to have to tackle better. They really tackled very poorly against UMass. And if you do that with Tech, they will make that game far more uncomfortable for you. But the Jackets were really bad Thursday night. So there's been a lot of not real good football uh, lately, kind of in the sport. This weekend, Alabama didn't score a touchdown. Now, Oklahoma's good on defense. They're not that good. So, uh, you know, Ole Miss, Alabama, you know, probably the loser of Texas A&M, they're done. So a week ago, it looked like the SEC could be making a case for five teams, but if you read Legge's thoughts over on dogpost.com, you can see that you're just kind of running out of spots now. You've got your four conference champions and your fifth, Boise State, who did not look good either, by the way. I mean, like the literally everybody looked bad except I would say Ohio State and Miami. That was about it. I mean, Tennessee scored a bunch of points, but like UNLV didn't look great. Ohio State looked good, as we said. Texas was fine. Penn State did not look good. Army's not good. I'm not going to give Notre Dame credit for beating a team that's a service academy. Miami 42-14. I mean, Florida's going to a bowl game. They're not firing Billy Napier. And if I told you two months ago that Billy Napier, that Brian Kelly would be more on the hot seat than Billy Napier, you wouldn't have believed me. Boise with a 4-point win over Wyoming. Wyoming's 2-9. So, you've got, and then Colorado just got smashed by Kansas. They just beat their brains in. Clemson 51-14, South Carolina 56-12. South Carolina took a little bit of time to get going. And then Missouri with a real lopsided win over Ole Miss, excuse me, over State. But where we're at right now, you know, let's just the Big Ten champion is going to be Oregon or Ohio State, right? So those two will both get in. And then you have Penn State and Indiana now because of all these SEC schools losing. Indiana will get in. Notre Dame, I even think with a loss to SC, Notre Dame's going to get in. And then you have the ACC champion, the Big 12 champion, the Boise champion, um, that you're running out of space. So what happens over time here is if 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 you are if you are Alabama and you're saying, well, we should get in because we beat Georgia. This, I mean, I just don't know if that's a compelling enough argument that you beat one team. I mean, who else has Alabama defeated? I mean, LSU sucks, so they're out. They've lost to Oklahoma. They've got two not quality losses in Vanderbilt and Oklahoma, both on the road. Um, so I just, all of their losses are on the road, Alabama. So, so are Georgia's, but Georgia mixed in a win or two on the road as well. They beat Kentucky. They beat Texas. I mean, Alabama has not played the schedule. So I would say Notre Dame, Indiana, Penn State, Ohio State, and Oregon are all in. So those five sort of Yankee schools, as my in-laws would say, they're all in. And then you've got to have the Big 12, the ACC, and the SEC champion, and then you also have to have the Boise champion. So that's nine. And although I went to school in DeKalb County, that only leaves three spots. And I just don't know that the SEC is going to get four teams in now. I think it's very much looking like if someone other than, well, let's just say if Clemson wins the ACC, I think Miami and SMU are going to get in as well. I just, you know, I don't know. It's one of those things where when you look at it, it's hard to keep sort of, I wouldn't say this is the wrong way to put it, but it's hard to keep making excuses for the SEC when you're losing at Florida and you're losing at Oklahoma. Like if it were your one loss, I could see it. Like Alabama's fortunate they don't have a couple more. They certainly probably should have lost to Georgia. They could have lost to South Carolina. They probably shouldn't have. They lost to Tennessee. They lost to Vanderbilt. They're like nobody's losing to Vanderbilt and Oklahoma this season deserves to be in the college football playoff. You throw in the loss to Tennessee, and then, Ole Miss, let me just say this about Ole Miss real quick. I think it was a great win for them. They beat Georgia. They took 2 weeks off, and Florida thumped them. The difference between Ole Miss and sort of the powers that be in college football is the powers that be don't lose at Florida and don't lose to Kentucky. Georgia played both those teams. They beat both those teams. If you want to be a power, you got to be a power all the time, not some of the time. And, Ole Miss just didn't look. It was hard for them Saturday. It was hard for them. Notre Dame, I just don't think we know a lot about them. But let me move forward with Georgia's situation. So Georgia will play the winner of Texas and Texas A&M. I think, as I said earlier, in a way, you'd rather play Texas A&M, but I think in both cases Georgia matches up fine with both schools. I mean, I think if they were to get A&M, they'd probably be a 10-point favorite. If they play Texas, they might be 3 or 4, something like that. And 10 might be high, but I don't think it's too high. I mean, playing at Auburn is very difficult. Playing at Auburn at night, it really is very difficult. And A&M let Auburn jump on top of them. When you get down 21 to nothing, as Georgia saw at Alabama, it's hard to come back in those games. A&M almost did it, but um, you know, again, when you're getting thumped by South Carolina, I mean, that tells you a lot about your couple things. First of all, it is very difficult playing on the road in this league. It just is. That's number one. Number two, um, you still have to be consistent. Your losses can't be catastrophic. And we've seen some catastrophic losses this year. Georgia under Kirby Smart has managed to, quote, lose the right games. They can't lose to Georgia Tech. Well, technically they could and still win the SEC championship, but I'm just saying you beat Tech and there's really kind of no questions. I think the Tennessee win probably did that for Georgia, but every single week, um, you get new data and so forth. But for Georgia playing in the championship game, a lot of people are going to be like, well, I don't want that. I don't want that. Yeah, you do want that. There's a lot of reasons why you want that. You want to play that game so you can get 3 straight weeks off. There was not a certainty. There was a very close to certainty that Georgia was going to get in whether they played in the SEC championship or not. But you don't want to travel on that first time. No, that first couple of days before Christmas if you can help it. Now listen to me here. You don't want to go on the road. Georgia had been on the road. I mean, they still may be on the road. They may be in the position where this is the worst of all scenarios, where they go play and lose in the SEC championship, and then they got to go travel. I don't think the loser of the Big Ten or the SEC championships are gonna be out of the playoff. The Big Ten loser will host. It's possible the SEC loser will host as well. I mean, if you look at Texas, if they lose, will they really have that many teams in front of them? I don't know about that. So, you know, the opportunity here is to win the game, go to play at the Sugar Bowl, okay? Instead of at Penn State, then you play, Ohio State or Oregon in the next game. Like you're not thinking clearly if you're saying, well, I don't want to play in the SEC championship. Yes, you definitely do, and you want to win it. It's not so every single week that the math has changed a little on all of these things. In the past, I would have said you have to win it. I don't think you have to win it this time, but you kind of want to win it. And well, I'd say you really want to win it because it sets you up. And if you win it, you'll be the 2 seed. And what does that mean? Well, the 2 seed goes opposite of the 3, which means you're going to be getting either the ACC champion or the Big Ten champion, a Big 12 champion. You're going to getting the matchup of those teams. Those teams probably will not survive the the quarterfinals, but I want to see the matchups. I mean, would Miami beat Tennessee? I don't. I don't know. Probably not, but I don't know. If it were in Atlanta, see, that's the problem for the ACC champion. They're gonna have to play in Atlanta, and if they're playing Tennessee, it's gonna be all orange. So that's the other thing is, you're hoping for certain situations. You don't want to hope, man. I mean, and the other thing too, let me just add this, is that if you win the SEC championship and you're the 2 seed, if the one gets upset in the quarterfinals, which is not out of the question, then you're the one that picks where you go. And if you're playing Texas in that semifinal round, then you're picking Miami, right? I mean, so there's all sorts of advantages to winning. You can't have a fear of losing if you're going to play college football. If you're going to play big time college football, your default cannot be we're going to back into this thing like the 96 Gators, like the 2017 Alabama Crimson Tide, like the 2021 Georgia Bulldogs, like the 2006 Florida Gators. Like you can't back in. You need to be on the front foot. And I remember those teams because they're rarities. Um, they lost their last game. Well, they Bama did not in 12 or 11. Did I say 12 Alabama? I meant 11. They did not lose their last game, but they lost the most important game of their season, and they still survived. The Gators losing in '96 to Florida State, and then getting matched up with them after winning the SEC championship, and all sorts of chaos going on in the Big 12 or whatever it was at the time. I think it was the Big 12. All those things, like that's not like you can't wish. You have to go make it happen. And in this case, I think for Georgia, you know, we're near the second season now. We have about 2 months left of this football season. 2 months ago, it was September 24th and Georgia had not yet played Alabama. That's how long we have to go until a national champion is crowned. Like I think that's another thing people are saying and not remembering here is, Georgia, if it wins the national championship, will play Tech, the SEC championship, and then in theory, 3 or 4 more games. I mean, that's a lot of games still left to be played. And then you look around at everybody and who's playing better than Georgia these last 2 weeks? Ohio State's played well. These last 2 weeks, probably Ohio State. I can't say that about. I mean, Georgia beat Tennessee, but I think Tennessee's played fine lately. Notre Dame, Notre Dame, but again, who is Notre Dame playing? Again, who is Notre Dame playing? And no hate on the Irish here, okay? Really, I don't really care, but I'm not going to sit here and act like beating Army is a major accomplishment because it's not. It's not. I mean, you lost to Northern Illinois. Now they got a win over A&M, and it was on the road, which is fine. Purdue sucks. Miami of Ohio sucks. Louisville's adequate. Stanford sucks. They beat Georgia Tech by 17. Hey, what is that? 18, something like that. They beat Navy. Nate, come on. Florida State's terrible. Navy's terrible. Virginia doesn't even have a. I don't know if Virginia has a winning record. Army, come on. So they've not really faced a legitimate foe since it's looking like Tech or Navy, whichever the two you want to say. But um, this is going to be a how do you say? This is going to be a close of the season, the likes of which we've never really seen. And Notre Dame being at 6, Notre Dame's going to have to host. You're telling me Tennessee can't go up to Notre Dame and win? Yeah, of course they can. I love hearing the Big Ten people. I heard Desmond Howard, and he's not the only one, say, I can't wait for these Southern schools to come up north and play. Hey, man, you don't want this juice, baby. You don't want it. They don't care about the weather. I mean, no one says that about the northern schools. They never travel down here anyway. So I'd be curious to see Penn State play Georgia. I mean, they beat Auburn's brains in 2 years ago or whenever it was. I'd love for them to come down in November when they keep talking about it's cold and all that stuff. It's not going to make a difference. If you're good, you're good. If you're not, and you talk about weather, I mean, I don't know. Is that all you're going with? Because there's some pretty bad football that's being played in the Big Ten right now. I don't know if you've noticed it. I mean, Minnesota Penn State game was wacky. It was not well played. Penn State's got challenges, man. Like they are not buttoned up the way you need to be. Colorado's wild. I mean, Kansas is out there killing everybody in the Big 12. There's a four-way tie in the Big 12. I can't figure it out. I know I can't. But I think if you're Georgia, literally everything is in front of you as it relates to this season. And I think they need to, just they know what they're doing. There's no confusion here. You just go win and you're good. Thanks for watching.